Hi there, welcome to Get Well, Stay Well on Revelation TV. Delighted to be joined once again by Felicity. How are you doing?
Hi there, Si. I'm fine. I've been working really hard and getting my newsletter out for the 1st of April.
Okay.
So every month I have to do some new articles, and it's great fun. And I put the article on the website so people can see it there. And if anyone wants the newsletter, just go on the website and check in with their name and address. And then every month, on the 1st of the month, they get a newsletter.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's good.
Felicity gone all digital with the modern era.
Having to, yes. Never really wanted to get into all this, but my goodness me. It's a learning curve, but it's fun, isn't it?
It is.
When it works, it's fun.
And it's not as difficult as people think either, is it?
Not really, no. You just need someone with you to help you to start with.
Okay.
Because really, you sit in front of the computer and you think, what do I do?
Yeah. Okay.
But it's an amazing way of communicating, you know,
is.
Instant, around the world. I'm getting emails from America and Australia and Russia, you know, it's quite extraordinary. And I just love it. I've just had my South African friend here from school who's been on the Get Well, Stay Well week, and we hadn't seen each other since we were at school.
Wow. She
saw me on TV, heard I was Felicity, so that doesn't mean a thing, Felicity Corbin-Wheeler, Felicity Gill, that meant everything.
Wow.
So, and then we discovered that we've been in the same class.
Wow.
So we've had a wonderful week, and she's got cancer, she's really fighting a battle, and she brought her lovely daughter with her, so we had a wonderful week and lots of information.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And what about today's subject, Felicity? What are we talking about today?
Well, today we've got Corinne, and she's talking about natural health. She's really talking about the food in a very sort of basic way for beginners. And I think because we have viewers who, you know, sometimes come in for the first time today, it's good to go back to basics as well. So we'll see. She's got lots of interesting points to make.
Can you just give us a background on Corinne?
Well, she's an American girl who does TV, and she went on the diet and was absolutely amazed. You know how God's diet actually puts the body right, and was really, really pleased to advocate it on TV. So she started to make these programs. And yeah, it's really interesting. It's always fun to hear it from the doctor's perspective and from the public. And this girl just happens to be articulate and really impressed with the diet. So it's fun to see it from lots of different perspectives.
I think today's program will cover really will help all our viewers, because it's the prevention as well is important, and food is so very important.
Right. She talks about fried food. Well, in my family, it was eggs and bacon at any time of day, because my husband had been an RAF pilot and they were given a wonderful flyer's breakfast. So he said, come on, let's have breakfast. And we would do that any time of day. So I'd do the fried bread, the fried eggs, the bacon nice and crisp, and sausages and tomatoes and everything else, all fried. So I had a lot to learn.
It's education as well, though, isn't it, Felicity? And that's kind of what our program is about as well, is educating the viewers.
Well, I feel so much better, you know, on the diet. I mean, it saved my life 11 years ago. And it goes on getting better because you get more and more raw as time goes on. You know, you start off making a few gentle changes, and away you go.
Okay, well, let's take a look at our first clip. It's as simple as what to eat.
What is your favorite healthy food? Is there a food that you think is healthy, but maybe you're not sure? Leave me a comment letting me know your favorite healthy food. In a previous video, I explained why nutrition information can be so confusing and so overwhelming, and I basically ruled out all the junky McJunk foods that we know we're supposed to avoid. So fried foods, refined sugar, processed foods, or anything with a really long ingredient list. And some of you are probably asking, well, gee whiz, Karina, what the heck is left for me to eat? And in this video, I'm going to tell you. Now, of course, there's still plenty of controversy about the foods I'm about to discuss, but I've done my best to really simplify it down. Just remember that every person's body is different, and there is no one perfect optimal diet that's going to be perfect for every person. So hopefully you can use this information to figure out the perfect diet for you. I want to make one quick disclaimer before we get started. As I mentioned previously, every person's body is different, and some people literally have allergies to certain foods. So you could have an allergy to any of the foods I'm about to mention, and obviously you wouldn't want to eat that food. Now, if you don't know if you have food allergies, there's a couple of ways to find out. If you just aren't feeling super healthy, or you feel like you're eating healthy but you still don't feel well, then food allergies could be a culprit. And the easiest way to determine if you have a food allergy is to eliminate the suspected food from your diet for 2 to 3 weeks, and then see how you feel when you start reintegrating that food. So some common food allergens are gluten, wheat, dairy, soy, and peanuts. But as I mentioned, you could have an allergy to any food, and you want to look into that as you're figuring out what the optimal diet for you is going to be. Fruits are loaded with vitamins, phytonutrients, and antioxidants, and they're delicious too. Since you're going to be avoiding refined sugar, fruits are going to be the best way to satisfy your sweet tooth. So let fruits be your dessert. Now, of course, fruits do contain sugar, but they also contain fiber and a whole lot of different nutrients too. And it's important to note that the fiber contained in the piece of fruit actually helps that fruit to not spike your blood sugar so much. So when you're eating a piece of fruit, it's not going to spike your blood sugar as quickly as having a soda or having a spoonful of sugar, because you've got that fiber in the fruit helping in that process. Now, of course, if you're trying to lose weight, then you probably want to go easy on the fruit. And certainly if you're eating a lot of fruit, you're going to want to be really physically active so you can burn all of those carbohydrates off. But again, fruits are a great way to enjoy and indulge your sweet tooth, and I encourage you to try all of the different fruits that are out there.
Hi there, welcome back. Felicity, in today's society, we're just tempted. There's temptation all over the place, isn't there?
Lead me not into temptation. It's absolutely true. And nowhere is that truer than, you're standing in the supermarket and you notice as you go out by the paycheck place, and they always have these tempting foods right there when you're standing waiting to pay. And we're tempted all the time with different things. But you see, now I've got on the raw food diet and love it. I'm no longer so tempted, and in fact very sugary things are a real turn-off for me, and coffee and tea, absolute turn-off. Couldn't possibly have those. So the taste buds refine, and you gradually get right onto the good diet, and you find the fruit is very sugary, and you find that you need less fruit to put in with the vegetables.
Would you agree that the hardest job is to get into the diet, but it's easier once you're in the diet, it's easier to maintain, isn't it?
Oh yes, and I think if one's been ill, you notice immediately that the raw food diet makes you feel so much better. It gives you more energy, and of course it's less load on the body to digest. So it's like the seeds and the nuts that we do. We soak them and we dehydrate them, and then they're not as indigestible to actually digest in the body. And when we blend or juice, we're actually breaking up the fibers, so it's making the fruit and the vegetables more digestible. So that's really why we do it. And for someone who's very ill, like my friend who's been here, she couldn't eat 30 or 50 carrots, but she can juice them and get the goodness from them without all the hard work of digestion.
What are the best fruits for us to be eating?
The best fruits. I would say the apples and the pears. The good old Cockney, up the apple and pears. They're the best ones. I love them. I love kiwis as well. And, we've got rainbow fruit. We've got so many wonderful colours. And I think it's really good, like the Gerson therapy does, to have a rainbow of juices during the day. So, for instance, I had beetroot this morning. That was absolutely gorgeous. It really builds the blood. It makes you feel much stronger. It's all the wonderful chemicals and nutrients that God has put in all these different colours. So we really need to have the yellow, orange, red, the green fruits and vegetables, like the kiwi, which I love, and then down to the dark ones, the red ones, and the purple. like the blueberries she's just been talking about.
Let me just suggest to our viewers, maybe why don't you try and change your diet for a week or a few days and just see how you feel, because I have to admit, since doing the programs with you, Felicity, I've changed my diet, and I'm eating a lot more fruits, and I'm doing the juices, and I'm doing the blending and things like that.
Wonderful.
And I feel great. You feel a lot more energy as well, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if you go back to having the ordinary food, you feel absolutely exhausted. So definitely for energy and for health, this is the way to go. And of course, it's the original food that God told us to eat in Genesis 1:29 and 30. I keep coming back to that. And the original sin was the temptation in the garden to eat the forbidden food.
And it's the encouragement to our viewers to just say, try it. Try it for a few days and see how you feel, and you'll feel great for it, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, if you start with just a weekend having the fruit and do your juices, because you're at home, you can actually juice at home. And if you have a weekend like that, you feel so much better and ready for Monday. And then, you know, you start taking things with you to work, for instance, and really trying to stick with the diet. When I go out now, and I went out yesterday for lunch with Anne and Kate, and so I had a plate of vegetables, and you can have rice, which is lovely, and soups, of course. So, you know, we can be selective, and we can still go out and have fun.
Now, just talk to me about allergies. The best way of dealing with that would be to test the foods that you're having and see what works and what doesn't work, and then eliminate them.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are more and more allergic because our food has changed, you know, even the way the vegetables are grown because of the soil they're grown in. So things have changed dramatically, and people are now very allergic. For instance, the wheat. There's a book come out called Wheat Belly that's really good. On my website now, I'm starting to stock these books. Really important to learn about the intolerance we have to gluten and gliadin. The wheat has changed dramatically from Bible times. You know, I've got a recipe in my book for the original, the Essene bread, which is really interesting and totally different to anything you get in the shops now. Mm-hmm. You make it with spelt and other lovely things, and you put nuts in it. You know, it's absolutely gorgeous bread.
Can you go into a little bit more detail how you make that?
The Essene bread, well, the recipe for it is on the website. It's in my book, and if people want to know exactly how to do it, then they can log in and have a look at it.
Okay, excellent. Well, let's take a look at our next clip. This is also how best to eat, but it's talking about vegetables.
Vegetables really should be the bulk of your diet. And whether you eat meat or not, every single person on the planet, myself included, would benefit from eating more vegetables. The bottom line is that our bodies, our internal organs, need a certain amount of nutrients just in order to function properly. And vegetables are one of the best ways to make sure that you're getting those nutrients. They're loaded with fiber, they're loaded with vitamins, and again, if you are not eating enough vegetables, you're never really going to feel satisfied and full. And this is because your body just isn't getting the nutrition that it needs. So if you have been eating a diet of processed foods and you're somebody who feels like you're always hungry and feels like you're never satisfied, then the lack of vegetables, nutrients, and fiber in your diet is probably the reason for that. And when we're eating nutrient-rich foods, like vegetables, we don't have to worry so much about counting calories, because suddenly you're going to get so much nutrition and fiber with these foods that you're going to fill up and feel full and satisfied before you'll be able to eat too many calories of those foods. And again, this is a topic that I've discussed in several videos, the empty calories versus nutrient-rich calories. And I think that really is the secret to not being on a diet and to not gaining the weight back, is recognizing that if we just take the empty calories out of our diet, we don't even have to worry about counting calories at all. So, vegetables. There's sweet potatoes, beets, spinach, Swiss chard, kale. There are a whole rainbow full of vegetables for you to try. As I've explained in previous videos, the white refined flour that's used in white bread, pasta, and tortillas is completely stripped of all of its fiber, its nutrients, and this refined white flour is full of empty calories. This means those calories turn straight into fat without giving your body any nutrition. It also means that this white bread and white flour products are going to significantly spike your blood sugar. Basically, it's like having pure refined sugar every time you have these white flour products. So I recommend that you significantly decrease, if not completely eliminate, those processed white flour products from your diet. Now, whole grains, on the other hand, can still be part of a healthy diet, but the trick is to look for minimally processed grains. So brown rice is a good example, millet, barley, wild rice. There are several different whole grains out there. And when you consume these minimally processed grains, they can be a really good source of fiber, minerals, nutrients, B vitamins, lots of things that we need not only to help us feel full, but to provide good balanced nutrition. So the easiest way to find these minimally processed whole grains is probably by going to the bulk section of your grocery store or even to a health food store. For the most part, these foods are ridiculously easy to prepare, just basically water and the grain. And if you have problems digesting these grains, you can soak them or sprout them to make them even easier to digest. Another key is to not make grains the bulk of your meal or the bulk of your diet. You can kind of use them supplementally, use them as, one of the sides, one of the smaller parts of your meal. You want to have these grains in moderation, and if you do have them, be sure to opt for those minimally processed grains.
Hi there, welcome back. Vegetables, Felicity. Talk to me about vegetables.
Well, of course, they're the basic of good health. You've got onions, we've got garlic, which are wonderful and a natural antibiotic in the body. We've got leeks, we've got carrots, of course. I got well on carrot and apple juice and the green juices. So all the greens, of course, wonderful, Swiss chard and kale and all these different amazing vegetables that, we have such a variety of them. And it's so lovely when you go down to the market here, and you just see rows and rows of these shining different colors. It's so beautiful. So there's no shortage of vegetables, and of course potatoes are a wonderful staple. And as long as you don't fry them and have chips, if you have the baked potato or the boiled potato, they're a lovely filler. And I sometimes put them in the vegetable soup.
You just gave me a face when you said chips. Do you miss chips, Felicity?
No, not at all. I think they're absolutely disgusting now. I really do. I mean, they're soaked in oil and then they're fried, and we all know that the fried food makes carcinogens in the body now. It's shocking because we've really been brought up in a British society or Western society, the Americans are even worse than we are, to revere these foods, to revere meat and dairy. The sausages that we have on the barbecue, for instance, and and chips go with everything, according to or French fries, as the Americans call them.
I think that's the key. That when you change your diet psychologically, you change your approach to food as well, don't you? The foods that you were grown up with, and you look at, they seemed and they taste as normal as you can imagine. But when you change your diet and you think about all those foods, you kind of never want to have those foods again, really, do you?
No, that's right. I mean, we've all grown up in different cultures. I grew up in South Africa, and people were on different foods. South Africa is a great meat-eating country, of course, and the colon cancer is really bad. And this girl who's just been with me, Anne, she was brought up in South Africa as well, and she lived there much longer than I did because I came back to school in England. So it's a great meat-eating culture. And she became vegetarian, which has helped her. But the meat-eating cultures have much more colon cancer.
Our director's just talked into my ear and said, what about oven chips? Because they're not fried.
Oven chips?
Yeah.
Oh, Artem, don't even think about it. Don't even go there.
Atom, there you go, direct answer from Felicity, you've been told. Yeah.
Because why are they so much worse? Because they've been in the pack, goodness knows how long, months, and they've got preservatives with them as well. So, you know, you've got chemicals, they might well be genetically modified. We have to remember that commercial food is just that, commercial. And so someone's making lots of money and they're not choosing the very best thing they can get for you. They are choosing what's going to make the most money.
Because when you eat the processed foods and you eat the junk foods, you're never full, are you? You're still hungry.
You're still hungry because the body is saying, feed me something that I can build on, that can nourish me. And so, you know, you have the coffee and the donut for breakfast and you're ravenous by 11s.
And what about the marketing? How we're sucked into this bubble. There are constant adverts on the television and billboards and magazines about how the way that they glamorize the junk food, shall we say.
Absolutely.
It's the money industry, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, they employ scientists to make the food addictive. You know, a lot of money is spent on getting the scientists who are really clever to get us addicted to the wrong fats, sugars and salts. And of course, it works. You know, we've all been addicted to these things.
Let's talk about white flour. What are your thoughts?
Well, unfortunately, the white flour is really dangerous now. And you know, white flour and water mixed together, we all did it at kindergarten. What does it make? It makes glue, it makes paste. And so when we have pastry and pasta, you pretty well got it right. It's paste, and it is going to clog up the colon, it's going to clog up the body and make us fat. And it's an empty food because the wheat and the water together are not going to give us any living nutrients. It's been cooked, it's dead, you know. So it's the living food, it's the raw food side. You know, when we have the raw carrot, you know, maybe just pick it out of the garden and wash it off and eat it. I mean, that's when you're getting the real raw living enzymes.
Explain to me how the white flour, how do the calories go straight to fat?
Because it turns to glucose chemically when you're eating bread and any of these things. They're really just turning straight to glucose in the body, which gives you an energy, but it's an empty food from the point of view of building cells in the body, because, you know, our trillions of cells are entirely dependent on what we put into the body, on the living enzymes. So that's why we go back to the Genesis diet of the fruit, the vegetables, the seeds, the nuts, and the green plant. And of course the wheatgrass is amazing because the wheatgrass has it's the complete food. It has all the vitamins, all the minerals, all the amino acids, which make the perfect protein. Because a lot of people, like me, used to think that the only protein was meat and dairy and animal protein. And of course it's not. The best protein on the planet is broccoli.
Well, as you mentioned dairy, let's go to our next clip. This is about dairy.
Dairy products are another controversial foodstuff. Some people will say we're the only species on Earth who eats another animal's milk, and yet it's important to notice that people have been drinking cow's milk and goat's milk for hundreds of years. So again, I'm not going to tell you whether or not you should eat dairy. This is a choice that you're going to have to make your own. But what I will mention is that dairy is a very common food allergen. And I personally have known people who have cleared up acne, asthma, arthritis, just from taking dairy out of their diet. So if you're somebody who experiences those things, it may be worth it to see if dairy is something that you actually do better by avoiding. Now, if you are going to eat dairy, then again, I have just a couple of guidelines. First off, look for the words pasture-raised or grass-fed. You want the cows who are making your dairy products to be very healthy. You want them to live on a farm and eat their natural diet so that they're actually providing the most nutrition to you in those dairy products. You also want to opt for the full fat version of whatever dairy products you're eating. So skim milk got on that fat-free craze that everybody was experiencing and trying to get all the fat out of their diet. Well, actually, the fat is what helps your body digest the dairy. So if you're eating fat-free dairy products, this could be why you're having a hard time digesting dairy. So my tips, if you are going to eat dairy, are to look for the words grass-fed and to always opt for the full-fat version. Legumes. This is your beans and any plant with seeds. So actually peanuts are also a legume, even though they contain the word nut. Legumes are a great source of protein. They're a great source of B vitamins and minerals and can really be a wonderful part of a healthy diet. There are tons of different legumes out there. Pinto beans, kidney beans, chickpeas, lentils, you name it. And you can significantly improve the digestibility of legumes with soaking. So beans have gotten kind of a bad rap for causing digestive discomfort, and you can completely eliminate that digestive discomfort by preparing them correctly. In a future video, I'm going to go over the process of soaking and sprouting beans, and it's the same process that can be used to make grains more easy to digest. And also adding a little bit of seaweed to the beans can also help make them easier to digest. So legumes, something you should be incorporating into your diet if you haven't already, and be sure to look out for that future video on preparing legumes as well.
Hi there, welcome back. Now Corinne was talking about milk and dairy and saying we should be drinking full fat milk, and yet on some of our shows we've said we need to avoid milk.
Well, we should avoid milk, really, because as Dr. Brian Clement says, it is the greatest single cause of cancer in the world at the moment, because we are not biologically suited to drinking the milk of another animal. So babies have mother's milk, and that's perfect for them. Every kind of baby cows have grown-up milk from the cow. But it's absolutely wrong that humans should be drinking cow's milk. They've now discovered and proved it to be true. And, you know, Brian Clement came to Jersey and spoke. We had 200 people there, and they were absolutely horrified to hear that the famous Jersey cow, you know, was producing this milk and the cheese, of course, and all the other things that we get from the cow that was actually causing a lot of cancer. And I have a lot of people from Ireland in particular, because that's another great dairy place. And it is sad, and it is absolutely true that dairy does cause cancer. And you'll never find the government saying this. It's like tobacco. They'll never actually condemn tobacco because they make too much out of the food lobbying.
What advice would you give? What advice would you give to new mothers who are looking to breastfeed?
Oh well, it's great to breastfeed as long as you can, and then go on to the juices and the you know, the mashed banana we do with our little grandchildren, mashed bananas, mashed avocados, and they can really get onto that. You can start green juices, as Dr. Robert Young was saying a few weeks ago. They had all their children on a little bit of wheatgrass, quite young as well. So it's a matter of education, really, and reading the books. You know, there's wonderful books on diet for children now, and again, that's on the new website that I just put on. So I've actually combined with Philip Day, because he's got so many wonderful natural supplements, and I've had so many, you know, so many of the viewers write to me and say, look, I haven't got the energy, and I don't feel well enough to go and hunt for all these things. Won't you just put them on your website? So what I'm doing is gently introducing some things, and you know, I have huge respect for Philip. He helped save my life 11 years ago from pancreatic cancer with his wonderful book, Cancer Why We're Still Dying to Know the Truth. So instead of looking for other makes of vitamins and things, I'd much rather, you know, go with Philip's, because he's done tremendous research. We've both been at this 25 years at least, and I like to work with Christians. So yeah, it's going to be great, and people can get the apricot kernels and things off my website now.
I think as well, when we say to our viewers that we have the wonders of the internet and technology, we can go out and do our own research. Some of the viewers might think, which website do I trust? It's unknown, isn't it? Because there are just so many websites out there.
And so many people are selling supplements. They're not all the good supplements. And so I feel when Philip has actually researched and gone into these things, and we've had long discussions about it, and you know, you have to really go with a Christian who believes in the Lord. I mean, I know jolly well I'm going to be held responsible for every word that I utter, especially when you're helping people with health. So you've got to be really, really careful that you're giving people the right advice.
Talk to me about legumes, chickpeas, beans.
Yeah, well, the beans are a good filler. You know, the lentils are a particular favourite of mine, and to cook them with garlic is lovely, because you have to have some cooked food as well. You know, there's this controversy really about how raw should you be. And the thing is, you start off by just introducing a few raw things, and you really, as the body teaches you, you learn to really build up to mainly raw, about 80% raw. Remember, we did a program with Katrina, who's 80, 10, 10. Mm-hmm. So the other two are with the oils, the natural oils, coconut oil, avocado oil, the sort of good ones like that. So, and the others are nuts, so you get the protein from those, and you get the protein from the green plant as well. So you can also grow these wonderful little sprouts. You know, you can sprout the sunflowers and the buckwheat, and so you can grow at home little pots of these sprouts, which you grow in the kitchen, under a window where you're getting a little bit of sun, hopefully, and within a few days you've got a harvest. It's amazing. So all you have to do is get the organic seeds and grow these, and then you add those to the juices. You can put those in the blender or the juicer, and they are the most nutritious because they're fast-growing, green, lovely plants that are growing with the chlorophyll in them, with the sunshine. You know, God has provided the sunshine and the earth for things to grow in, and it's really getting back to nature.
And the beauty of eating healthy and raw foods is so inexpensive as well.
Especially if you grow your own.
Exactly.
It's really inexpensive. So I'm gradually building up more and more things that I can grow on my roof terrace there. And I do try to buy organic, where, you know, there's so many sprays now, there's so many chemicals that are put on our food. So really, the only way you know that it's really pure is when you've grown it yourself.
And how important is preparation of food before we actually eat or cook the food or anything like that? Preparation of food, especially to avoid digestion? Well,
it's got to look pretty, hasn't it? Because you know, people start enjoying it from the moment they see it, and then it's got to taste good. So the body actually starts digesting in the mouth, as we know. So the salivary glands produces ptyalin, and the body, you know, is getting ready right the way through the digestive system to process this food. So it's really important to have a lovely presentation. I like the herbs. I think we haven't used enough herbs in British cooking, particularly. So I have a little herb garden now, and I add the herbs to everything. Chives, oh, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
Wonderful. Because eating raw and eating healthy can be delicious.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's lovely.
Okay, well, let's take a look at our next clip. This is about the basic diet. Oh, let's take a look.
Nuts and seeds are loaded with fiber, protein, minerals, and healthy fats, which are integral to helping us form healthy brains. Nuts and seeds make a great addition to salads and salad dressings. They make a wonderful snack and a great addition to breakfast cereals. I also want to mention quinoa, which is often considered more of a seed than a grain. Although it makes a great substitute for rice, and it's prepared in pretty much the exact same way. And it is also something that can be often be tolerated by people with gluten intolerance. So quinoa can be a great substitute for grains and rice, as I mentioned. And quinoa is a complete protein, which means it contains all of the essential amino acids. And if this is something you haven't heard of or aren't familiar with, I would highly recommend that you introduce yourself to quinoa. This is something that I eat on a very regular basis and is a really great part of a healthy diet. To meat or not to meat? That is probably one of the most controversial questions out there in terms of health, in terms of diet. And we have to recognize that at this point, research has indicated that eating huge amounts of red meat and eating processed meats like hot dogs, sausages, processed deli meats, any meat product with an ingredient list has definitely been linked to clogged arteries and heart disease. And of course, there are some people who will tell you not to eat meat at all, and still others who will tell you to avoid all of the animal products, including eggs and butter. Now, I'm not going to tell you whether you should eat meat or not eat meat. You have to make that decision for yourself. And I recommend that you make that decision based on how you feel when you eat meat. Now, if you are going to eat meat, then I encourage you to do so in moderation and to be selective. So I have heard the rule of thumb that you shouldn't eat more than a palm-sized portion of meat at any given meal. So eating a huge steak that's, twice the size of your head is probably too much meat to consume at one meal. And you also want to look for the words grass-fed or pasture-raised and preferably organic. This is going to help you avoid factory farmed meat. And again, this is a topic that I've discussed on this channel before. So, factory farmed animals, many of them never see the light of day. They're pumped full of antibiotics and hormones and often fed an unnatural, sometimes genetically modified diet of grains, which makes them really, really sick. So we want to avoid conventional meat, which most of which is factory farmed. And you can do so, again, by looking for the words grass-fed or pasture-raised on the packaging of any meat products or dairy animal products that you purchase. And the same thing goes for fish. You would want to look for the words wild-caught. One other quick note about meat products. Meats that have been cooked at extremely high temperatures, such as frying or barbecuing, have a whole other host of other health concerns. Acrylamide is a cancer-causing chemical that is produced whenever foods are cooked at extremely high temperatures. So avoiding barbecued or charred foods, fried foods, of course, is going to be a really good option. And you can use the cooking technique low and slow. So using a low heat and cooking that meat more slowly at that low heat is going to help preserve the protein and preserve the nutrients that you're getting out of that meat you're cooking.
Hi there, welcome back. Felicity, eating meat, we need to eat it low and slow.
That's if we eat it at all. I don't do it anymore. But when I think of the barbecues I did for all the children, well, everyone wanted the burnt sausages, because they were so delicious. And of course, there is research in America that says it's the greatest cause of childhood leukemia is sausages. Oh dear.
Wow.
Oh dear. So my grandchildren don't get sausages now. And you can get vegetarian sausages, of course, which is much better. But again, you don't want to fry them.
And what about how the foods that we eat, how can that affect our mental state?
Oh, hugely, hugely. I mean, as soon as you get on the living diet, you feel much lighter. And we found that at Hippocrates, when we were all absolutely raw, we were just on the green juices and the salads, and that's all we had for months while we were training there. And we didn't cheat because, you're not going to pay a lot of money to go to America and train and then cheat. So, I did it 100%. My breathing got so much better. I had more energy. It was great.
And also, there's mentioned in the clip about eating nuts and seeds. It's something that is a filler during the day as well. When you're at work, you can just have a cup of nuts or a bag of nuts and just be eating them, and that'll get you through to the next meal, wouldn't it?
Oh, it's great. And when I'm driving long distance as well, just have almonds and macadamias, which I love, pistachios. Mind you, they're difficult when you're driving the car to open the pistachios. Yes. So you've got to have almonds and walnuts, of course. Walnuts are brain food.
And it was also mentioned about the healthy fats. What are the healthy fats?
The healthy fats are like coconut oil, avocado. We do need to have these in the diet, most definitely, because they're brain food And so it's really, really bad. People get Alzheimer's if they cut out all fats. You don't want to cut out all fats. But the coconut that we've done programs on, that's a really good oil to have.
Okay, well, let's take a look at our next clip. This is about eating the easiest diet ever. Let's take a look.
Life, wisdom. I've spent the last few days watching YouTube videos about people who weigh 300 and 400, even 800 pounds. It's no secret that America is getting fatter. It's estimated that 64% of Americans are overweight, with about half of those being clinically obese. Even childhood obesity is skyrocketing, and now 1 in 3 children is overweight. So clearly, most of us are struggling with weight gain. And we're struggling against a food industry that seems dedicated to selling us more crappy foods. So recently we did a video recommending that people eat more like our grandparents ate when they were our age. And in this video, I want to tell you how. A quick look at obesity rates in this country might help explain why we would recommend that we eat more like our grandparents. Prior to the 1950s, less than 10% of Americans were obese. And that rate increased steadily until the 1980s, when we saw a pretty steep increase in obesity. At this point, the obesity rate is 3 times higher than it was just 50 years ago. So what's so different about the way that Grandma ate when she was our age and the way we're eating now? Let's take a look. Grandma ate real food that was prepared in a kitchen. But most modern processed foods are actually created in a laboratory by scientists. A quick look at the back of a food label will tell you whether that food is made of food or is made of chemicals. Things like monosodium glutamate, high fructose corn syrup, polydimethylsiloxane, brominated vegetable oil, EDTA, TBHQ. Most of these chemicals didn't even exist when your grandma was your age. Now, this rules out all the fast food, the processed food, junk foods, just add water, instant meals, or microwave meals. But it doesn't necessarily rule out bread, pasta, hamburgers, pizza, French fries, or any of the foods that you really want to eat. You just have to make sure that they're actually made of real foods and were prepared in a kitchen, rather than in a laboratory by scientists. Grandma's food mostly came from her own backyard, or maybe her neighbor's backyard. But most modern foods travel anywhere from 1,300 to 5,000 miles from the farm to your table. Grandma may have every once in a while gotten to enjoy some food that someone brought to her, or maybe the milkman had to travel 30 or 40 miles to make his delivery. But most modern foods are traveling significantly larger distances, and most people aren't eating foods that were grown locally. In 1870, 100% of the apples consumed in Iowa were grown in Iowa. But in 1999, only 15% of the apples consumed in Iowa were actually grown in Iowa. The nutritional content of a food decreases over time. And it decreases significantly when foods travel a significantly long distance. In many cases, chemicals are even used to preserve the foods. Civil engineers use the term food miles to describe how this mass transportation of food affects the environment and our energy usage. Your best bet is to try as much as you can to eat locally grown foods. And depending on where you live, this can be somewhat difficult. The website localharvest.org will actually let you search for farmers markets by zip code. Another option would be growing your own food or even starting shared community gardens in your city.
Hi there, welcome back. Children are dear to us all. Now, how can we protect our children and make sure they're eating the right foods?
Well, it's really important, you know, what they start off with, because those are the building blocks for life. So first 5 years, you know, you really want to have them on the best diet that you can possibly get. And it was interesting, she's talking about locally grown food. It's really important that the food hasn't been on a lorry for a long, long time. And, you know, the supermarket food is sometimes picked unripe and then transported and then eventually sprayed, and things are done to sort of bring it to ripeness, but it's never the real ripeness that you get from the fruit that you pick off the tree, that is beautiful and ripe, and we really have to go back to nature.
And growing your own food is also fun as well, and that would
it's fun for the children.
Enjoying.
Yes, it's fun. They love that. They love planting seeds. They love growing the wheatgrass, the vegetables. It's all such fun for them, and to actually eat something that you've grown is very special. It's going back to Grandma's time when children knew that carrots came from the earth and they didn't come in a plastic pack from the supermarket.
I think the previous generation's diet was they were just so healthy. They didn't have any adverts of junk food or anything. It was just fresh, whole-grown food.
Yeah, it's going back probably to my parents' day when it was really healthy, and we used to grow our own. And you would go down to the beach. You'd get the seaweed off the shore, and you'd take that as fertilizer onto the ground. So it was all very healthy.
Okay, well, let's take a look at our next clip. This is continuing to talk about how Grandma used to eat fresh foods. So let's take a look.
Grandma's food came out of her oven, or maybe she ate it right out of the dirt. But most modern processed foods come out of drive-through windows, cardboard boxes, plastic wrap, or even electronic snack dispensing robots. Close to 100% of the food that Grandma ate when she was your age, she actually had to cook and prepare herself. Maybe she was lucky enough to have someone else do the cooking, but the point is that if most of the food you're eating is coming out of a microwave or a plastic container and you're not feeling particularly vibrant and healthy, then that could be your problem. And if your mouth is gaping open at the thought of having to actually cook, then you need to snap out of it. Millions of people are doing it right now, and most of them aren't as fat as we are. And millions of people have survived exclusively on cooking their own food before us, so just suck it up. Grandma wasn't exposed to hundreds of food advertisements day after day. But we endure temptation after temptation every time we turn on the TV, walk down the street, or even go out to a ball game. Next time you're watching TV, count how many commercials you see for junk foods or restaurants, and pay attention to what kind of foods they're featuring in those advertisements. Chances are most of those foods didn't even exist when your grandma was your age. Once I started becoming aware of how relentless their marketing was and how much they assumed that I would just be a good little overeating consumer, it became a lot easier for me to recognize those temptations and consciously divert my attention. Grandma only ate when she was hungry, or when she could afford food, depending on her situation. But in 2000, Americans were eating an average of 500 calories more than they were eating in the 1960s. And that fact alone can explain the obesity epidemic. But why are we eating so much more food? Of course, there are a lot of different factors, like the temptations I mentioned earlier. But we should also remember that junk and processed foods are full of empty calories. And that means these are calories that turn straight into fat, but they're not going to fill you up, they're not going to leave you satisfied, and you're going to be hungry again pretty shortly after eating them.
Hi there, welcome back. Just like Corinne said, the junk foods are full of empty calories.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And the body is, the cells, as we've talked about, the trillions of cells, are craving the electricity from living food, the oxygen from living food, the hydrogen from living food. And once we cook food, of course, we've actually cooked the goodness out of it. So we get something called leukocytosis, which is a rush of the white blood cells to fight the invader of this strange chemical we're putting in our body, the chemical in the processed food, and the you see, we change the chemical constituent of food when we actually cook it.
And what about the dangers of using a microwave?
Well, really you want to throw out the microwaves because they do leak, and although the manufacturers say they don't, but I've seen research to show that they do leak, and they leak very often at head height in the kitchen. You know, the microwave's been put in at head height, and a lot of women are getting kinds of brain tumours, and it's absolutely wrong to irradiate food anyway, quite apart from the danger of the microwaves coming out at you. You know, why would you irradiate food? But in a hospital, most of the food is now irradiated. Mm-hmm. So the poor patient laying in bed, you know, trying to get well, trying to get their immune system well enough to get out of the hospital, and they're being fed all the wrong foods, which is tragic.
And what about when we go to a supermarket and the foods that we buy, they're wrapped in plastic in containers?
Well, I mean, that's just terrible. You know, the bread is always wrapped in plastic unless we buy those beautiful, you know, the bread, the sort of artisan bread that you can get in the villages here. But everything is wrapped in plastic, and then we use cling wrap as well to cover things, and it's all very convenient, but of course it leaches out carcinogens in the plastic. You know, this plastic thing has really come about, hasn't it, in the last, 50, 60 years? Everything's in plastic. The children's toys are in plastic now, and they put them in their mouths, and of course they don't realize that there are xenoestrogens in the plastics. When we wear nylons or tights for the women, you know, you're encasing your lower body actually in petrochemicals.
Well, we talked about eating well, changing our diets, but just briefly before we finish today's programme, talking about exercise.
Well, exercise is vital as well, because we've got to oxygenate the body. It's not just our lungs we have to oxygenate, it's every cell in the body has to be oxygenated. So I like to take oxygen drops. I put them in my water, which gives you extra oxygen. I want to eat as raw as I can with lovely foods that are full of oxygen and electricity. And then the body gets well and stays well.
And eating raw can be delicious as well, can't it?
Oh, it's the best food in the world, yes, it's absolutely wonderful.
Well, just briefly tell our viewers, what is your everyday diet?
Well, I would start in the morning with to rehydrate with lots of water. So I'd start with a glass of maybe warm water with some lemon in it. So that alkalizes the body, just a little bit of lemon alkalizes. Obviously, if you bite into a lemon, it's completely different, and that's acid. But a little touch of lemon is an alkalizer.
And then for your lunch, what would you have?
Well, let's finish with breakfast.
I don't think we have time,
we
to
haven't
be honest,
got time.
So let's
okay.
go for your lunch.
So lunch, well, salads. And if you can't digest salad, blend it, because I've been doing that this week with my friend. We blend it, it's much easier to digest.
And finally, your dinner.
And dinner will be vegetables. Maybe a curry, but always beautiful vegetables.
Okay, well, sadly, Felicity, we're coming towards the end of today's programme. Would you just like to summarise to our viewers what we've discussed today?
Yeah, well, we've really been talking about this girl, Karina, who is a TV presenter, and she has gone on the diet and realised how wonderful it is. So she's presented it as a newcomer coming into the diet, really, which is different to the doctors we normally have. And it's just good to have lots of different people coming in with their views.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Felicity, for joining us today. It's very informative to me and to all our viewers, I'm sure, as well. So thank you, viewers, for joining us as well. We've covered a number of videos, a number of topics today on our programme. So remember that we have a catch-up service on Revelation TV. It's www.revelationtv.com. We're also on YouTube, where we have some of our videos on there. It's youtube.com/RTV Europe. We're on Facebook, social media, facebook.com/RevelationTV. We're on Twitter, twitter.com/RevelationTV. If you're watching us live, we'll continue for the last half an hour, covering all the emails and text messages. If this is a pre-record, thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Bye.